Hello and welcome. My name is Shannon Kemp, and I'm the Chief Digital Officer at DATAVERSITY. We want to thank you for joining the DATAVERSITY webinar today, The Future of Data Governance, Trends to Watch in 2026. It is the first in the new monthly webinar series, DGIQ Dialogues, happening the third Thursday of every month. And if you are unaware, DGIQ is named after one of our flagship conferences, which stands for Data and Information Quality, which is coming up the first week in May. Hope to see you all there. And for this webinar series, each month we will have a panel discussion like today, or have a one-on-one interview with a data practitioner to hear how they are getting things done. So just a couple of points to get us started. Due to the large number of people that attend these sessions, you will be muted during the webinar. If you'd like to chat with us or with each other, we certainly encourage you to do so. And to note, Zoom defaults the chat to send to just the panelists, but you may absolutely switch that to network with everyone. For questions, we will be collecting them via the Q&A panel, and to find the chat and the Q&A panels, you can find those icons in the bottom middle of your screen or in the top toolbar to activate those features. And as always, we will send a follow-up email within 2 business days containing links to the slides, the recording of the session, and any additional information requested throughout the webinar. Now, let me introduce to you our moderator for today, Jim Johnson. Jim is a data leader and evangelist with more than 25 years of experience with data governance, data management, EDWBI analytics, and IT across the banking, healthcare, health insurance, pharmaceutical, and restaurant industries. Most recently, he served as senior manager of data governance at HireRight, where he helped mature their enterprise data governance and data literacy efforts. And joining Jim today on the panel is Noah Yao, Francis Storr, and Luanga Yankee. Noah is a principal at SC&H, and specifically a principal in SC&H's data strategy and governance practice, bringing more than a decade of experience leading digital and data initiatives for Fortune 500 companies and leading healthcare organizations. He partners with clients to design and implement enterprise data strategies and governance frameworks that accelerate data-driven transformation across their organizations. Frances is the Data and AI Governance Manager at Jackson. She is a data governance and technology leader with more than 20 years of experience spanning software development, enterprise architecture, and modern data management. She specializes in building practical, scalable governance frameworks that strengthen organizational trust in data and enable the confident, insight-driven decision-making. She is also certified applied data governance practitioner and certified data management professional. Luanga is the founder and president of Paddock Consulting, and in that capacity, he helps organizations boost their business results by improving the quality of their most important data. During a distinguished career as an information leader, Luanga has successfully designed and implemented projects in multiple areas, including information quality, data governance, business intelligence, data warehousing, data architecture, and building a data culture. His initial experience is in petroleum engineering and operations. And with that, I will give the floor to Jim to get the discussion started. Jim, hello and welcome.
Thank you. It's really exciting to be here. The first of what hopefully is going to be a nice long series of wonderful conversations. So if you haven't been to DGIQ, it's known for networking and knowledge sharing and having some of the most amazing conversations with professional peers from data governance, AI governance, data management, technology, business, you name it. So this is just a mere extension of all that. We're just going to kind of have an informal chat, and we're going to start with a retrospective view of 2025. And the first question for the panel is, what do you believe is the biggest insider lesson we learned about data governance in 2025? Francis, why don't you kick us off? Oh, you're still muted.
Thankfully, Zoom gave me that warning too. The biggest lesson from my perspective is AI is not waiting for us. You'll notice in my title, I manage data and AI governance. I spent a huge amount of time on AI governance last year. And really it comes down to, context is king, right? All of the things that we've been working to building our glossaries, building our ontologies and taxonomies, getting all of those things out there so that people could consume it. Now we have a new persona. We have a digital persona that is ready and eager and hungry. And not to be pessimistic, it feels like we might be a little bit late if we don't have a good base so far. But like I said, AI is not waiting for us, and it's time to kind of turn up the heat a bit.
Yeah, it's moving fast, that's for sure. Noah, how about you?
Sure. So I completely agree. I think with Francis, I do think that a good lesson that we learned is, the necessity of data governance for any advanced digital or data work. If you're here, you probably knew that, right? Like if you're here and in these sessions and you're trying to learn these things, you probably knew that it was a necessity. But I do think that in 2025, we gained a more cultural acceptance of it. I think that's great. But I do think what faces us on the phone then is, yeah, we don't have to justify it anymore. I do think we are now challenged to figure out how to make it effective, right? Don't have to ask for investment. There's investment, but it's on us to basically try to actually get outcomes from the investment. So I do think that, again, it's been a great 2025 for data governance, as far as being able to have people pay attention to it.
Yeah, which is always good. And Luanga, what was your insight for 2025?
Right, first, greetings, everyone. Thank you for choosing to spend 1 hour of your life with all of us. We appreciate your being here. So, key insights. First, I agree with what Francis and Noah have said so far. So, a couple of ads. The first one, AI and Gen AI expose the weak foundation, the weak data foundation in the typical organization. Now, we knew it. We've been trying to solve data quality problems and issues and data governance needs for many years, but we were not necessarily getting the management attention and the board level attention. Okay. AI changed that. Now everybody is concerned about, is my data ready for AI and all this and all that. So that is a good thing. That is a nice horse that we can ride. The second big insight, I think, is that we find out that we really need to integrate the governance of structured data, the typical data in tables, with the governance of unstructured data. Think of all the documents, the emails, the Microsoft Office documents, the videos, the WhatsApp chats now, the web conversations we have with clients and so on. Someone has to harness that. Why? Because that data is used to train the LLMs, right? That data is about 80% of the information assets of an organization, and it grows up 4 times faster than structured data. And of course, with RAG and agents, all those things use documents and structured data and data in table structured data. And of course, Gen AI itself creates a bunch of unstructured data, the prompts, the results, the videos, the images, and so on. Now, in most organizations, there's already a group looking at unstructured data. They typically go by the name of the information management people, the records management people. And they've been trying to govern that data. I think as those of us in the world of DG need to partner with those folks in the world of so-called information governance and come up with a unified approach. When we do that, our AI and Gen AI solutions will have a chance to succeed. All right, those were my two.
Yeah, I think we're all hitting on the same theme, right? Like data governance itself was challenging. We know that we're maturing. Now AI's here. So we're going to relive some of that again, not just the pressures of DG for those who haven't caught up, but also the pressures of AI governance. Very good insights. Let's look away from the rear view mirror and let's start looking out the windshield, just to continue the car analogy. In 2026, what do you think, what current misconceptions about data governance do you think will be debunked? And what, if anything, should organizations leave behind because it's outdated? Noah, let's start with you on this question.
I mean, I like this question. I like both these questions. I think they work really well. I feel like misconceptions they abound, right, as it relates to the dataverse, data sphere, whatever you want to call it. Right. For data governance, I do think a lot of it, we stop at step one a lot of the time, right? We grab answers like data ownership and data stewardship or data cataloging, or you should put formal policies in place as sort of the answer, right? Or like a personal pet peeve of mine is, I implemented MDM, now I have better governance, right? And again, this kind of goes to my answer to the first question, right? Which is just, I think a lot of people are paying attention, and that's great. I do think that we're when we think about these step ones, we have to go further in 2026. And it's an outdated concept of just, I had the concept of ownership or metadata management, and I worked on it, and I'm done. I have better data governance, right? Because the truth is, we all know in a year, nothing valuable will have come out from it. So for me, I do think for 2026, we need to be more complete. We need to be more purpose-driven or holistic about the way we think about data governance, right? As far as what are the initiatives that you're putting in place and what are they actually trying to achieve, rather than just saying it's data governance. And to that's one for me personally that I feel like we're having to debunk fairly often.
Yeah, I've heard that too. It's part of the maturation process, right? Get targeted interventions, but also understand that it's ongoing.
Yep.
Yeah. Francis, what are your thoughts?
So from my perspective, I think as far as what should we debunk or move away from is, those feeling like we've got some set frameworks that we can always rely on. We really have to be adaptable. The pace of change is incredibly fast right now, and we really have to prioritize what we're spending our time on, prioritize what we are assessing, criticality of, defining. Because the volume and the velocity of the consumption of the data, whether it is structured or unstructured, is massive, right? And so if we're still stuck on, defining critical data elements, maybe we need to move on from that. If that's not going to impact our ability to have the right data for AI consumption, then probably we should table that and maybe look at some other information sources that we should be looking at to see if they're fit for purpose.
Yeah, very good point. I mean, essentially AI becomes the focus, so embed DG along with it. Mm-hmm. Right. And Luanga, what are your thoughts about this?
All right, thank you. How do I follow those two folks who spoke? All right, so I'll be controversial. Why not? So I actually have three things here. The first one is this, if you look at LinkedIn post, there's been a tug of war. There's been a lot of noise about data governance should not be driven by compliance. It should be driven by business value, because we want to be on the offensive side of the game, not the defensive. I mean, this is all fine. But guess what? With all the AI regulations happening at the local level, the federal level, the international level, compliance with those regulations is what will allow us to deliver AI solutions to our customers or to the marketplace. So compliance will mean business value. So that's a mindset shift I think we need to have. So this reminded me of the movie The Godfather 3. Corleone is trying to make his business more legal and legitimate. He gets pulled back into the corruption and crime. He has this thing, whenever I think I'm out, they pull me back in. Whenever we think we're out of compliance, we are being pulled back, and that is okay. So we need to participate in making sure our organizations are compliant with the AI regulations. The second myth is the concept that governance slows innovation. That's going to have to stop. If AI is innovation, compliance is going to be important. Data governance is going to be a critical part of AI. And we need to position our governance programs in a way that they are seen as value deliverers, not obstacles. And here's the third one, and I hope I am proven wrong by people like my friend Francis, right? I'm seeing that a lot of folks in data governance believe that because data governance is so critical to AI governance, data governance people should run AI governance. I'm not quite there yet. Francis is smiling.
I would love to talk about that, Luanga.
Yes. Yeah, and like I say, I hope I'll be proven wrong, right? And the good thing is we have different models. In some organizations, DG is running AIG. In others, DG sits at the table of AIG, doesn't run AIG. So we'll see what works. And if those things are done by good people, both methods will work if they are fit for the organization where they are implemented. So to me, AI governance and data governance are two different things. DG is critical to AIG. DG should participate, should be at the table, even have a big chair, but not the lead chair. And I think AIG requires collaboration between data governance, IT, business, risk, legal, ethics, and so on. So if DG can figure out a way to build strong collaboration and partnerships with all those other concerns and disciplines, then DG will be more successful and AIG will be more successful. Yeah, so sometimes I feel DG teams try to do too much and they end up being too big, bloated organizations. My model is small team, huge influence. Anyways, so we'll just see. We'll just see. Thank you.
I like taglines, like these little, phrases or 30-second bits that kind of summarize. This year, this was the first year I actually saw the phrase a culture of data compliance. So I think as the regulations keep changing, we're going to talk about that in an upcoming question. We're going to see a little bit of traction there. But yeah, all this hints at DG's ongoing and it needs to evolve and adapt. AI too. Okay,
Yes.
so that leads us right to technology. What technologies will fundamentally change how we approach DG, and should we worry about any innovations today to keep us in line? Luaga, why don't you start with that?
All right. So I come from an oil company. We were in the business of producing oil and gas, and we had tons of sensors on our processes, to measure temperatures, pressures, water cuts, production rates, and so on. And as a data quality manager, data governance manager for my company, I had to mine that data. So governance became about, hey, let's look at the sensors. Are they calibrated? What is the calibration schedule? Are they operating within the specified range? I believe that because sensor data will continue to be increasingly integrated in AI solutions, our DG people may have to start spending more time on that type of data if it's created in their organizations. Not all organizations use sensor data. The second technology is so-called intelligent document processing. You scan documents, you use machine learning technologies to basically look at a document, index it, classify it. Sensitivity, so that document isn't an invoice, is it a purchase order, So as we do more, use more LLMs, as we do more Gen AI in our organizations, data governance needs to play a role in the way those technologies are trained, are fine-tuned, and are used. Partnering, of course, with the data architects, who are mostly the traditional data architects, who are mostly responsible for identifying the things of interest to the company and their definitions and structure. The third technology, which is related to what I'm talking about here, is computer vision. You have computers, let's say in the police department, in street corners, videotaping stuff. And then entities are extracted, the car make, car model, car color, the license plate, who is this person, and that's, or same application, but on a manufacturing side. The computer helps the engineers identify manufacturing defects and so on and so on. So again, all those technologies create a bunch of data that needs to be governed. So intelligent document processing and computer vision, of course, were part of this unstructured data I already spoke about. So those are some of the three technologies that I wanted to focus on. There are more, of course.
So Francis, what are your thoughts? Oh, you need to unmute.
Kind of sticking to the AI lens, I think the things that data governance need to be thinking about is MCP and AI agents. And the reason why I bring that up is data that we didn't think about before as being something that could be consumed is going to be consumed, is already being consumed. I recently read a post on LinkedIn where somebody was praising one of the developer assistant pull request bots, right? It's reviewing the code, it's doing a code review, and it was able to find a defect in the code because of a chat in Slack, right? Because the developers were discussing the actual issue and what needed to be solved and what the design was in Slack, that gave the agent the context it needed to know whether or not the code is right or not. So did the developers understand that their chats are being consumed by AI agents as text, as context? What else are they going to be used for, right? And so there kind of needs to be this awareness of, hey, this is an information source that could be used by AI, right? And I will say that, you know, kind of going back to Luanga's comment about data governance and AI governance, I think there absolutely needs to be an awareness of data governance practitioners of what the concerns are in AI governance, because it drives around the point of, is that data fit for purpose, right? We all know what that concept is, except in the past we thought about, is this right for a regulatory use case? Is this right for board reporting? Is this high enough quality for those things? But now we're talking about, is this data allowed to be used for AI for this particular business function, right? I work in financial services, and we can't use certain data sources for making a decision on if we're going to sell a product to a customer or not, right? So I have to, as someone wearing my AI governance hat, I have to understand what data is okay to be consumed by AI from a regulatory and ethics perspective. But then from a data governance perspective, I have to understand what is consuming the data sets that we have, and is that okay? And then we get into the situation of, where is the data going that AI is generating, right? So you kind of have to understand both. And so both of these kind of come down to this idea of that we need to know where data is coming from and where it's going, and consider AI as being another persona, and it's a digital persona, right? So, and that's why from my perspective, as far as the technology perspective of what we need to be paying attention to, is it's that digital transformation of data consumption and decision making that we need to kind of keep our finger on the pulse about.
Yeah, I think decision making hits at a hot topic right now, where AI can peer and start mapping those decision making networks. Yeah, very good. Noah, what are you seeing in your side of the world?
Well, I think my answer gets to be shorter, because I completely agree with Luanga, and I think particularly we do a lot of work with healthcare, life science, pharma, med tech companies. I think if you're not thinking about IoT and the different ways that you can extract data and manage that data and utilize just all the information that's available to you now from a health perspective, then that's going to, you're going to be behind the boat, right? If you don't do that for this year. So I won't talk too much about that. I just +1 on that one as far as IoT data as it relates to health. So I think what I'll do is I'll just say, you know, I won't name any specific technology providers, but a term that I really love is the term metadata lakehouse. I think that's a good term to know. I think that's a good concept to know, whatever you want to call it, or whatever other technology companies call it, metadata fabric layer, context layer, whatever, right? You know, you can always Google it and find the company that coined the term. But I do think that we are looking at 2026 as a place where we can use technology to create a more unified, translatable, usable interface for people, data, technology, where this metadata-driven architecture, I mean, fine, if AI is the reason that we get to invest in it, great, right? But other than that, right, if we can have all of the context, the semantic layer, data fabric, metadata lakehouse, whatever you want to call it, I think the entire organization benefits on this more efficient foundation. All the other things I talked about with the step ones, I do think if you can drive it through a consumable linked metadata layer, that to me is a way that will change how we do data governance and how we actually do effective data governance.
Yeah, underscoring the need for metadata. Same problem with data governance.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to get bigger with AI governance. Yeah, it's so if we're ever gonna, I'm a sci-fi junkie, I will readily admit that. If we're ever gonna get to the USS Enterprise onboard computer that understands everything we say in multiple languages and spits out answers really quickly, there's a lot of work in foundational, especially in the foundation to get going. So interestingly, everybody talked about AI. So we combined this question and the next question. So we're going to skip this one and we are going to go right to data ethics. So how do you see the relationship between data governance and data ethics evolving, and how can we integrate ethical standards? Francis, why don't you start?
I think I kind of started touching on this a little bit, right? As far as that fitness for purpose piece, in data governance, we had kind of probably a more narrow set of concerns around data ethics. It was pretty clear cut, I think, the types of things that we needed to be considering. I think now, because you have a situation where decisions can be made that impact real people in very quick ways, right? That we have to make sure, again, understand what are the use cases of AI, and is this okay for this data to be here? I remember when we very first had I think one of our first DGIQs that combined with the AI governance conference, there was a lot of data governance practitioners there really just focusing in on, they kept kind of thinking it was all about garbage in, garbage out, right? And I'm sitting there like, wait a minute, guys, what about impaired fairness and bias, right? Having a data set that has the potential for impaired fairness and bias from a traditional, data quality dimensions perspective probably looks pretty fine, right? All of my gender information is correct. All of my birth date information is correct. All of my demographic information is correct and complete. But what is this without understanding the use case and how it's going to be used, right? That's a real problem. And so it's really about making sure that, is the outcomes, is it being used for the right purpose? And then, like I said, going back to the idea of the data that's generated by AI. Do people understand that this was generated by AI? Do they understand that this needs to be validated, that there could be hallucinations, that there could be biases in this? If they don't know that the data was generated by AI, they may not think that that's something they need to worry about. So that data needs to be tagged, right? And the appropriate use needs to be defined. And so I think the basics that we all know, they still apply, but we have to kind of just listen to and learn from AI and understand the rules are the same, but the criteria is a little different, right? So.
Yeah, it's kind of the difference between I know I can, but should I?
Should
right?
I?
It applies to a lot of things in life, and it's going to become even underscored more with AI, which is getting better and better and harder to see what is and isn't. It'd be nice if everything were labeled, right? Human generated, machine generated, et cetera.
Yeah.
Luongo,
I would say
go ahead.
Just add really quick. I will often put my different hats on, right? I'll say, okay, now I'm talking about AI governance when I'm at work, right? We're talking about, what controls do we need? What are the different risk factors? Da, 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 da. And then we start talking about, we're going to share this data. And I'm like, wait a second. I'm putting on my data governance hat, right? Yep. Let's define this as a data product. Let's define the terms of use for this, right? Let's use our data governance framework. It doesn't matter that it just gives us an additional kind of reason to put those terms in there. And if we've got that structure in place, then we have the ability to just go ahead and define it and define that acceptable use of the data.
Yeah, good points. Luongo, where do you see the relationship evolving?
Thank you. So, like most things in the data space, AI has magnified and shined a bright light on issues that existed before.
Yes.
So some non-AI related ethics issues, collecting more data than necessary, sharing data that you should not share, losing the anonymity of data because you're combining different data sources, lack of transparency about how the data is collected and used. And of course, with AI, there's additional problems. Biased AI decisions. How do we prevent those? By the way we select the data we use to train the model, validate the model, and trust the models. The use of AI in ways people did not expect. How do we control that? So where am I going with this? Those are real issues. There's regulations that talk about data being used ethically. So DG has a big role to play. But this is another space where I believe DG should say, hey, who's minding ethics in our organization? If nobody is, then I advocate that there's an ethics officer or an ethics team to look at that, then partner with them. The regret to me would be saying, hey, no one does manages ethics, so data governance will do it. I mean, we have so many difficult issues to tackle. Let's partner and collaborate. So the model I have in mind is, DG as a servant leader, not DG as a leader seeking servant. So, hey, what work are we doing? What are the data ethics consideration? How can data governance help address those, prevent the problems? So to me, that is a critically important role for DG to play, especially in the AI space.
We have a lot to figure out. The good news is there's more literature, there's more research, there's more results and knowledge being shared around all this, even at DGIQ conferences and other conferences around the world. So I think there's a whole plethora of literature that's going to be generated.
Yes.
Good points. Okay, well, that's a good segue into the next question, which is all about culture. So a lot of this involves human beings making the right choices, having guardrails, et cetera. So how do we grow organizational data trust and data acumen in 2026? And what's the role of leadership? And this applies to both data governance as well as the world of AI. Noah, why don't you kick us off with this one?
Sure. I mean, I think we're well on our way, as opposed to the previous question. I think on this one, we're on our way. General data acumen is growing. I think that's pretty consistent. It's uneven. It's got its own biases and opinions, but generally when people are talking about data trust, data governance, data, right, far more in 2026. So I do think that as it comes to data trust itself, the people side is sound, right? As far as having open minds and having opinions and having a lot of thought leadership, to your point, Jim, that's out there, right? And the technologies are evolving. We are looking at transparency. For me, the role of leadership is a tough one. Obviously, it's going to be case by case. But I do think leadership, and I mean, I kind of sound like a broken record, but I do think leadership is most needed in applying effective governance. Right? You don't really need leadership to talk about it or think about it or understand that you should trust your data. I do think the role of leadership to foster the culture is in the actual application of things that change people's day-to-day lives, right? And make people engage with governance and create better governance. So to me, that is the role of leadership, or if you are a leader and you're trying to figure out ways to get involved, it's the carrot and the stick when it comes to actually operationalizing data governance. I think the culture and I think the trust is fine. I do think that the role of leadership is in actually trying to make organizational change, more so than any sort of thought or acceptance of thought.
Right. People need to evolve too. Leadership does as well.
Mm-hmm.
Francis, what are your thoughts?
I think there's not really a whole lot new that has to happen here. I think the same things that we've needed to do in the past are the same things we need to continue to do. We need to collaborate. We need to be open-minded. I think, be open to iterating, making mistakes, getting dirty, all of those things. And I think from a leadership perspective, they've got to create the space for that. Right? And they've got to create the space for building those foundations. In the past, you could get by with using tribal knowledge. You could get by with cleaning up the data manually, all of those things. And so, the trust in the data could have been good enough at the time, right? When we were just talking about people consuming the data. But now we're talking about, again, a digital persona consuming the data at a higher velocity. And so that means that we have to be able to build in the time to build those foundations if we haven't done that already.
Yeah, again, AI is going to cast a spotlight on everything, the good and the bad. Luanga, what do you think? Where do you think that organizations can grow?
Thank you. So I always smile when I hear the term, the label data trust, because it reminds me of a blog by my friend Julian Schwarzenbach in the UK, long time ago. The title of his blog was, Does Your Data Trust You? Kind of flipping this thing upside down, right? So can your data trust that you will acquire the right amount of the right data? Can your data trust that you will take care of it? You will define it properly. You will structure it properly. You will name it properly. You will prevent it from inappropriate use, from loss. I believe if we, as data people, DQ/DG people, implement structures that will enable our data to trust you, people will eventually trust the data as the outcome of what we do. So obviously we want our stakeholders, we want our business people to trust the data. But we also have to remember something, right? Most data is created by business processes, by business people. So as DG, let's work with them to make sure we surface their data quality requirements, their data requirements, and then we embed that in their work processes. Of course, a lot of data is also created by IT, the summarizations, the aggregations, the transformations. So IT also has a role to play. You ask about data. I love the fact that you use the label data acumen. I prefer that to data literacy. I know others use data fluency. You know, by the way, I think we're missing the boat a little bit on data acumen, data literacy. It's much more than data-driven decision making. It's much more than ability to read, work with data, analyze, and communicate with data. Quite frankly, in my organization, those two things have never been the problem. What I needed most, I wanted folks and managers and individual contributors to understand and value the work and effort it takes to manage data and assure its quality. That's what I needed them to do, because then they would support data quality improvement projects. Then they would support process improvement and so on. That's what I needed. So to me, data culture really means that, and managing data as an asset, understanding the critical relationship between business activities and data, choosing to invest in data quality, and so on and so on. So leaders, the senior leader sets the tone. I was working in a company where safety was important. We have tons of people working outside next to equipment and gases and so on. So the leader set the expectation that we would have a safety culture, that everybody would be responsible to create a safe environment and follow the safety protocols and so on. Leaders need to set that same expectation for data if they want different results. DG people cannot solve that problem alone. Data people cannot solve that problem alone. So to me, I look at what do leaders decide is important? How do they communicate that to the organization? How can I convince my leader to speak and act like that for data? Then we'll have a data culture.
Yeah, which essentially boils down to we need them to model the changes that we want to see from everyone else, right? And that requires understanding. I can't tell you how many times I've heard comments about, oh, well, we're already doing DG, but you have a lot of data problems, and there isn't a widespread appreciation of how much work goes into data quality and all the data governance efforts. And AI, again, massive spotlight on all of that because that's a whole new layer on top. Very interesting insights. So we're bumping up a little bit about time. I want to make sure we have time for questions at the end. So I'm going to skip to a couple questions. We're going to jump to something that probably everybody on the line on today's webinar is wondering. What do we do today? Right? There's a lot of a lot of concerns. There's some advances, there's some progress, but I'm hearing some of the same kind of concerns, maybe spun a slightly different way. What practical steps can organizations take today to future-proof their DG frameworks? And what low-hanging fruit is there that they could actually tackle today and at least move in the right direction? Francis, why don't you start this one?
I think just kind of reiterating some of the things that we've said already, and I really like what Noah said about the metadata lakehouse. The key there is about, it's probably one of the first times I've said, I'll admit that, okay, you can rely on a tool now. Right? Because, so many people want to rely on a tool and a technology. And, how many times have we said, people in process, but in this case, this is probably having your catalog in a spreadsheet is probably not going to be the solution for the future, right? So make sure that you've got your basics, your metadata, all the different things that you need to be able to capture your governance decisions are in something that can be leveraged by additional systems, right? And it helps you today, and it also helps you in the future by being able to kind of make that readily available for additional consumption by AI. That's kind of, I would say, one of the main things that you can kind of do. Again, you're still doing the basics, but you're doing it in a way that you're thinking about the future. And then going back to the idea of just, whether it's AI, whether it's data for analytics or sharing or whatever it is, understanding where did that data come from, what should it be used for, what is it acceptably used for, and just kind of stick to that. And then you can still apply those same things. AI is just another consumer.
Yeah. Yeah, you see how easily we intertwine. Ethics and regulatory constraints and data quality and cataloging, and it's a very nebulous web sometimes, but that's
I am impressed that there's some new technology coming out that is starting to actually give the ability to define your ontology. And then also link that into your glossary. And and by the way, this is all is available and being able to be used by the co-pilots, right? So somebody's starting to make those connections that all of this is valuable.
Which just means more pressure. You need to define things, you need to standardize, you have to document. Yeah.
Well, and going back to the question you skipped earlier about, how does data governance leverage AI? I think that we can't be so, it might not be right. Guess what? It's probably going to give us something closer than what we have, which is nothing. Right. So it gives us a starting point to kind of advance further. We should use it as an accelerator.
Yeah, I agree. Luanga, what do you think?
Thank you. So perhaps my angle on these two questions is, if I run a DG team, how can my team become more effective, right? So it's not how can my team do more, it's how can my team be more effective? So the first thing that comes to mind for me is this: we need to resist the temptation to be seduced by the sweet sounds of mermaids that lead us to shipwrecks. So what the heck do I mean by that? The fads. There's a new blog of this, new white paper, let's go do that. Or technology. We rush to buy tools without having really understood the processes that we're trying to automate. So to me, I'm saying time out. Okay, let's resist that temptation. Let's focus on the fundamentals. Oh, by the way, we talk about AI a lot, but most of our organizations are still not doing AI, or even within an organization, most people are still in the old world, the non-AI related world, and they still need data governance help. So we need to be able to focus on those fundamentals also. I've been teaching leading organizational change for 20 plus years now, because I realized that's the critical skill I needed to be successful leading DQ and DG. So What can we do to future-proof our governance programs? Let's really become highly skilled in leading organizational changes. If you think of all the things we have talked about today, they're all innovations. They require adoption of new practices, of new processes, of new tools. How do we improve our ability to get the adoption of all this stuff? We have to learn how to do that. So I said I teach classes on this. I'm happy to see that we have 2 new books now on leading change in data governance. So I'm happy that we seem to be responding to that very critical need. I think we need to be really skilled at collaborating, influencing, building partnerships. When we do that well, we're more successful. We can get AIG to be successful. Yeah, let me just stop here. There's more, but let me stop here.
Yeah, so I hear 2 maxims in there too. Tools. So we've all of us have talked about this indirectly or directly. Tools don't solve people and process problems, and we all know that a lot of data governance and even I would venture to say AI governance problems are people and process problems, right? That's a challenge. And now the second maxim is slipping away. I can't remember what I was thinking. Yeah, so do you think that your teams in the future will have DG based AI agents, like just extending your staff and working that way? Noah, what do you think?
I am a self-professed AI skeptic as it relates to data governance. So I think it just depends, and I don't know if we have a consistent explanation for what quantifies as an agent, right? I had a good time this morning. We were reading a couple of team members reading a post about, I think McKinsey CEO said they had like 60,000 employees and 25,000 of them were agents, right? And I was kind of like, well, that I just need that defined, right? Like, what do you consider an agent? So my point is, do I think that there's a world in which, AI powers better data governance? Of course, right? Do I think you can do it autonomously? Do I think there's ways in which we can support better ways of working, application of data of governance, monitoring, risk control? Yes. Access management. I think there's lots of use cases. That's actually, what I want to talk about at DGIQ in May, right? Is the use of AI in governance. I'm not so sure that I feel that right now you can let AI agents be a part of your data. I'm trying to think of the right phrasing for it. Be a part of your data governance organization, right? AI is a black box for the most part right now, right? Right now, they're very closed. They're very opaque systems. People don't understand them. People don't trust them. If that's what we think, then by definition, it's not a good fit for the word governance. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think there's a lot that we can do with AI to make ourselves and our teams better at applying data governance. I myself don't quite buy into the idea that, I have a governance council or a governance organization, and one of my little icons is a head that I say is an agent, right? I'm not there yet, and I'm not sure I'll be there for a while.
That might be something we see evolve in 2026.
Maybe.
Very good. Shannon, how are we doing on time? I think we're right up against the Q&A portion.
We are, yeah. We're right at, we've got about 12 minutes left in the webinar. Should we dive in?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, lots of great questions coming in. Great discussion going on, y'all. So thank you so much for this. So diving in here, a fit for purpose needs to evolve to understand that there are many different uses for data, not just one. It really depends on the user of the data. What are your thoughts on this?
I'll take that. I remember when I first started in data governance at Jackson, fit for purpose was basically one of our main premises, and I struggled with this as a software developer because it was put in a way that made it seem like it was something that could be measured objectively, and I was like, this doesn't make any sense because the purposes are varied, right? And so to me, it comes down to, what is the acceptable use of this data? Is it at the right quality for that user? And so it's really, it's a combination of, is this data a high enough quality? Is it coming from the right source? It's like a collection of the the credentials of that data from a governance perspective, right? And then from a user perspective, maybe this doesn't have this particular high of quality for one particular element, but maybe it's fit for someone else's purpose, right? And so it absolutely is subjective depending on the consumer of the data. And I don't think it's something that we can necessarily define a one size fits all ahead of the understanding the use cases.
Let me add to this, Jim, please.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So that's a wonderful question, obviously. In my previous organization, when we were doing our enterprise architecture work, we basically built so-called thread matrices. Imagine a spreadsheet going across. You have the different data types or subject areas. You guys may call them data domains now of interest. And then the rows are the different business processes and business activities. And we're trying to answer the question, this data entity, which business processes create it, read it, update it, or dispose of it, delete it. And we did basically this analysis and design work for data, right? We did that with business people, of course. And then we were able to show here are for the key data people want, here are the business processes that create it, and here's everybody, all the processes that use it. So process owners, let's get together to define the data quality requirements for that data. Because they are different. Different teams have different requirements. As a follow-up of that, we established a principle that the data quality requirements that we were going to honor were the most stringent data quality requirements, so that when that data is created, it's created once to meet the needs of all its downstream customers, including those customers, the strictest requirements. Therefore, we eliminated the need for some of those downstream customers to create shadow databases, shadow systems with redundant data entry so that the data could meet their needs. So yes, data has to be fit for purpose, but really has to be fit for all the purposes. And the people who create the data must honor the needs of all their downstream customers, even if their own business processes don't use that data. So that's a mindset shift. We were talking about building a culture. Those are some of the mindset shifts that we had to establish early in our DG and DQ efforts.
Yeah, which reminds me of what I was going to say earlier. Data governance is culture change, it's organizational change, right? And a lot of that's mindset. You got to get people to change their minds before they change their behaviors. Very interesting. Shannon, do you have go ahead, Luana?
Yeah, lots of great questions
taken
coming
the
in.
time to define those mindset shifts, communicate them, and help our organization shift. That's also a critical part of DG, I believe.
Yep, absolutely. I'm sorry, Shannon, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So many great questions coming in here. We've got about 7 minutes left. I think the real challenge with unstructured data is we can't apply the same mindset of quality to it. Unstructured data can be classified based on the sensitivity of it, but would it be a huge undertaking to think that we can easily apply quality standards to it like structured data? Unstructured data is messy, like the real world, and it is for this reason we can't dispense the human from the loop regarding AI. After all, there's no consequences for AI if it hallucinates, gets it wrong, and most of the data AI uses is unstructured. So what are your thoughts on this?
So I have been researching this for a couple of years. So let me add let me share a couple of things I have learned. So yes, unstructured data is different, but it is subject to the same list of data quality dimensions. Unstructured data has to be accurate, it has to be precise, it has to be consistent, and so on. It has to be traceable. So what's different? The way we define those data quality requirements for those dimensions is different. But it's almost like the same path, just different types of answers. But there's also version control, of course, and who's the author of all this stuff, and is that document still relevant? So the basic definition of data quality requirements are similar. Now, there's evolving techniques now to measure the quality of unstructured data. They use different techniques. It's not necessarily data profiling, but there's tools and techniques out there that as data people, it behooves us to become more familiar with. Or even better, let's find out who the document management people are in our organization. They probably already are doing it. We're just not aware of it. The governance, for in my organization, the data definition stewards were definition stewards for structured data and unstructured data. It didn't really matter in which form that data was. If it was about revenue, there was one steward, one definition steward for all revenue. All revenue. So the field is growing, and there's also this technology I talked about, intelligent document processing and computer vision, looking at documents and videos and extracting entities. Now, the minute you extract those entities and classify those documents, all those things are stored in tables. It becomes structured data. Then you can run your typical data quality, data governance tools on that. So, exciting subject, growing need to have robust solutions that incorporate data governance and information governance. Sorry for the long answer.
Let's see if we can get a few more questions squeezed in.
Absolutely. So data literacy is now evolving to data fluency because no one wants to be seen as illiterate. So also fluency works much better because you have beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels of fluency, much like you do when learning a new language. In this sense, I see this being bilingual in the workplace, two languages, the language of the business ops and the language of data. Do you agree?
Yeah, that hits the nail right on the head. Francis or no, do you have any thoughts on that? You're on mute, Francis.
Sorry about that. I was just going to see if Noah wanted to respond first.
I just agree. No, I do agree. So Francis, whatever you have.
Yeah, no, I agree too. I think, when it comes to, I think one of the challenges that we all that we're all trying to overcome is this idea of, can data people speak the business? Can the business people speak data, right? And Jim, very first DJIQ I went to, you were talking about the purple people, right? Yep. And can you talk to both? And I think that's where those of us in data governance can help model that and bring everyone together. That's one of my main goals, is bringing my data stewards, my business data stewards, to the table with the technical teams, and asking the technical teams and creating the structure for them to be able to talk to each other. And I think that, it's going to be an organic maturation of that data fluency and getting those different groups to keep talking to each other until they start to now, see the perspective of each side.
So Pam, great question, great comment. Yes, I agree. Now you differentiate the data literacy from data fluency. A few slides earlier, Jim used the label data acumen. I actually prefer data acumen. Why? Because in my company, we were talking a lot about business acumen, financial acumen. So to me, I say, you know what? Let me use the language my organization uses, and I'll just apply it to data. So our efforts were labeled data acumen. So my recommendation is, use whatever language is most appropriate for your organization. Be pragmatic, not dogmatic.
Yep. And define what these terms mean. Ending on a data governance note right there. So Shannon, I think we're at the end.
Yeah, thank you both all so much for this great conversation. We hope to see you all speakers will be at the conference. We hope to see you all there. And just a reminder to everybody, I will send a follow-up email for this webinar by end of day Monday with links to the slides, links to the recording as well. Thank you all so much for being a part of the first webinar in this series. I hope you enjoyed it. And thanks to our panelists. And thanks to Jim for moderating.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, participants all over the world.
Yes, thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Shannon, can we stay for a sec? Oh, she's gone already.